January 27th, 1926, it was announced a new Saltair would rise from the old site. The size of the new Saltair would be bigger and more elaborate than the old Saltair. The new Saltair opened on May 27th, 1926. In 1927, Sunset Pier was added, as well as new games and rides. At the end of the 1920s, they added a small 200-foot sandy beach and repainted the whole building. The Lady of the Lake had been reborn. Then something happened called the Great Depression. Many people were still trying to seek entertainment during the Depression. In fact, in Lagoon in 1931, they had 15,000 people on Labor Day, and Saltair had 10,000 people in 1930. The idea came through ads saying we should just dance through the Depression. Many dance halls began opening up everywhere, and Saltair and Lagoon began to capitalize on dancing, having these nice bands and promotional packages. Cars also started to change the behavior in Utah. By 1939, car sales began to rise, and there were 112,000 registered cars in Utah. 1930, Saltair developed a bigger parking lot, and then in 1936, they had to increase it again. With more cars, it also made the choice of activities far more endless, and Saltair was heavily affected. To add to Saltair's hardship, fire once again became a problem. A small fire swept through the roller coaster and other locations in 1931. In 1932, repairs were made. During these repairs, though, in 1932, a large gust of wind blew down the giant roller coaster. In fact, it killed 2 men and injured 6. The repairs from all of this totaling $100,000. To make matters worse, something Saltair thought they could rely on began to turn its back on them. The water also became a problem, as it started to steadily decline since 1925. In 1933, it reached the lowest in Saltair history. Beachgoers had to walk half a mile to the water's edge. The low water also caused a huge problem with brine flies and foul smells, a smell that many native Utah people know all too well about. In fact, that's why many of the locals don't swim in the Great Salt Lake today. In 1934, they decided to build a boardwalk, and in 1935, they built a small train that would bus people out to the water, all trying to combat the low levels of the water. And then once again, Lagoon would come back to be a problem as well. See, Lagoon had clean water and was far easier to get to. The Depression didn't see the end of Saltair, but it definitely leveled the playing field for Saltair. It no longer was a sure thing. The money just wasn't always there like it once was. It was no longer on top. As 1942, the effects of World War II began to present themselves. The end of the Great Depression was followed by World War II. The first began with shortages of workers. That would not be the only shortages Saltair would face. Tires, gasoline, repair parts would all be in drought. And in 1943, for the first time in 50 years, Saltair would choose not to open due to these shortages. They also remained closed in 44 and 45. As the war ended in 45, they decided to get ready to open the following season. The 40s saw an increase in the water in the lake, helping turn just a little bit of luck towards the resort. Because of the increased water, 10,000 visitors came to the resort for the 4th of July in 1947. In the 1948 season, they put in new fountains. Unfortunately, Saltair was not making enough money to make a profit. In 1950, the Tribune released a devastating article about the cleanliness of the lake. The article talked about how sewage was being released into the water near Antelope Island. Studies showed that salt water did not eliminate the bacteria as it was previously thought. Thus, the number of beachgoers just plunged, which I wouldn't blame them because I wouldn't want to be swimming in poo either.
Oh, poop.
For the 1954 season, the most extensive renovation of the resort was planned. This plan was made due to the pressure of the state wanting to put in a state-run resort facility nearby. $250,000 in renovations were done, including a sandy saltwater pool that was created that would pump salt water in. They created a new entrance as well as a new parking lot to host over 1,200 cars. However, near the end of the season, an unexpected 70-mile-per-hour wind blew through Saltair. This knocked down the giant racer roller coaster, and it was not rebuilt. Not rebuilding the roller coaster for the Saltair actually seemed like the beginning of the end, because in 1958 they did not have a good financial year. There's even a rumor that they began to try offering the Saltair to different investors, and one of those people was Walt Disney. And in the rumor, it stated that basically Disney replied saying he would take it if it was in a metropolis area and that it could be open year-round, which that was not something that the Saltair could provide. Not being able to find a new owner, they decided that they would just give the Saltair to the state. 1960, an empty Saltair sat on the shore, looking abandoned. This abandoned look is exactly what grabbed a movie maker's attention. In 1961, shooting on Carnival of Souls began, and in 1962, a look at Saltair was featured in that horror movie. In many scenes, you're able to see exactly what the Saltair would have looked like right after it was left. Next enters a man named Sheldon Brewster. Sheldon Brewster was part of the Salt Lake City Yacht Club. After negotiating with the state, they finally came to an agreement that if Sheldon Brewster and company could raise $250,000 by December 1st, 1966, then they would give them the land so that they could restore it. After a huge effort, December 1st came and they just could not obtain enough money. Now, don't think we forgot about Lagoon. Just to help us understand how well Lagoon was doing compared to the Saltair, we need these guys, the Beach Boys. Now, the story goes that one of the Beach Boys knew a local. The Beach Boys had a concert that night at Lagoon, and to kill some time, the local suggested a trip to Saltair. He was blown away by the dance hall and the bands that had played there. As they were going to leave, their car got stuck, and this made it so they ended up being late to that concert. He even ran in with some mud from the Saltair on his shoes. So the next day, they took their photographer out to the Saltair, and the pictures ended up being an album cover. Lagoon had surpassed Saltair. This visit to Saltair didn't help Mr. Brewster, unfortunately. In fact, not many people know that the trip even existed of the Beach Boys. Then, to add on to all the stuff that the Saltair had gone through, in 1967, another fire swept through. This time, however, firefighters were able to at least save the pavilion, and Sheldon Brewster, trying to look at things as positively as he could, said that this would work in perfectly with the renovations that they had planned to carry through with the Saltair. This didn't really mean very much, however, because they weren't able to raise enough money to appease the state.